Hello and welcome back. Lady Joyful here for Love From Lizi. Thank you for joining me today for this 10 cards video using the Totally Tropical May card kit. Incidentally, this card kit is perfect for entering our new Love From Lizi blog challenge that's recently gone live. The first challenge went up, and if you enter that you could win a gift certificate to spend at the Love From Lizi store, so make sure you check that out. It's a colour challenge which perfectly matches the kit, and I'll have a link below for that so that you can take a look. Okay, so my first card, I am using the stamp set. I stamped out a load of leaves directly onto my white card base. To the top portion, the bottom portion is going to be covered with the polka dot pattern paper later. But to start with, I stamped out these leaves to the top half of my card base, and I used some temporary adhesive on the back of the masks, and I have masked the first two leaves, and then I am using the glimmer paste and I am sponging it on over the masks. I thought sponging it on would be easiest to give a thin layer. I've never actually used this stuff before, but I thought that would be easiest. In hindsight, I think it would have probably been quicker just to use a palette knife to apply it, but using the sponge did work, so it was fine. So I just went along sponging, trying to make sure I got it in all the cracks and crevices, and then I would lift up the leaf mask and move it along to the next leaf and then continue going. It would have been easier if there were masks for all the leaves, but it's great that the stencils come with these mask portions anyway. I really like that, so it meant I didn't have to make my own masks. Then I set the glitter paste aside to dry and started working on the other elements of my card. I'm using a piece of the gold ribbon, and I put some double-sided tape across it, and I'm adhering the leaf ribbon to it so that the leaves are coming down from the gold ribbon. And then I will adhere this ribbon to the top of my polka dot paper panel, which I have already trimmed down to be the correct width for my card. So then when the glitter paste had dried, I gave it plenty of time to dry. I think I left it overnight. When it had dried, I adhered the polka dot paper down, and I noticed the leaf on the very right was kind of poking out the edge, so I did glue that one down into place. I then stamped a sentiment to the bottom right hand corner using my Misty, and I heat embossed that with the gold embossing powder, and that finished my first card. For my second card, I decided to stamp on some vellum. I would have liked using a scalloped rectangle for this, I think, but I don't have any scalloped rectangle dies, so I couldn't really do that. So I'm going to stamp a leaf in opposite corners and then a second leaf in the lower corner, and also a sentiment in the middle. And I'm heat embossing these using the gold embossing powder again. And this is a really nice gold, like the shade of gold of this embossing powder. I'm using the zigzag pattern paper as the base element of my card. Then I'm going to adhere the vellum over top. I do not have a Xyron machine, so I'm having to try and very carefully hide all my adhesive behind the embossing. A Xyron would have made this much easier, because otherwise I didn't really have many places that I could put the adhesive, so it was difficult to get it down properly. I felt that it was looking a bit plain, so I added some sequins, and I kind of went a bit overboard and added quite a lot of sequins. So at the corners I added a little adhesive behind the vellum again and hid it behind those sequins. And that completes my second card. My third card, I started by stamping out each of the images from the stamp set, and I'm using MFT Black Licorice Hybrid ink. I then coloured and fussy cut those off camera. Then I'm creating the elements for my card base. I have a panel of the gold mirror card and a panel of pattern paper. Don't want to waste any of the mirror card, so I'm completely cutting away all but the amount I want. I'm going to use some liquid glue along the back of the mirror card and put that into place on my red card base. Just use my tweezers and use the guide on my craft mat just to help get that lined up. So I'll get that pressed into place, and then I'll put some more glue in the empty space and push my pattern paper panel into position. I'm butting right up against the gold. Next I arranged my leaves and flowers, and I'm going to use some glue to adhere those into place. I'm going right up to the edge because I liked the idea of giving them a bit of freedom, I guess, so that they can kind of curve up and look a bit more alive, a bit more like real plants. I then decided I wanted to add some peel-offs to avoid my sentiment getting lost. 2 rows of peel-offs and added my sentiment in between, and then heat embossed it. I should have heat embossed first because even though I was being very careful, I managed to melt one of my peel-offs, so I had to replace that one. And that finished my 3rd card. I again went with the gold look for my 4th card, which I'm using the toucan die, and I really like this die. The mirror card is kind of thick. It did leave some marks where the holes in the die are, the holes for kind of poking the pieces out. Running across those with my bone folder just to flatten them back out. I'm going to use a grey card base for this card and the gold kind of Aztec patterned, I guess, paper. Out how far down I need that to be for my toucan to fit. I have some double-sided tape to the card base, and then I'm again using the grid on my mat to line everything up, trim away the overhanging piece. I then added a gold peel-off to edge the very top of that panel. With the help of my reverse tweezers, I will get the toucan into place on the left-hand side of my card base. I decided to add a sentiment, and I didn't heat emboss this time because I'd learnt from my mistake on the last card, so I just used my black licorice ink. It's card number 4. Card number 5 again uses a toucan die. I'm cutting myself a frame of the gold mirror card. I used 2 circle dies to create my frame, and then cut some leaf pattern paper from the same circle die. 3 toucans, a black one, a white one and a yellow one, and I'm piecing them back together to give me a somewhat realistic looking toucan colour wise. Stamped my sentiment onto my wooden banner. To start assembly, I want my toucan to look as if it's sitting on the frame, so I'm just making sure that it will fit properly for doing that. Using my craft glue on the back of the wooden banner, and then I'll use my T-square ruler to get that lined up. Just make sure it's completely straight. Some black foam squares on the back of my toucan, and I'm layering him over the wooden banner and pressing him into place, which completes that card. Next, I decided to use one of the tags by stamping out the leaves, and this time I'm using the stencil, and again I'm using my double-sided temporary adhesive to adhere the stencil into place. Stamped the large leaf with Evergreen ink, and I'm ink blending over it with Forest Glades, and the smaller leaf I stamped with the Forest Glades and then ink blending over it with Frayed leaf ink, and all these inks are from Altenew. Stamped and ink blended a flower as well using some pinky red Altenew inks. I made a whole bunch of leaves so that I had some spares, and then I fussy cut them out. The Evergreen ink to add my sentiment to my tag, and then I will adhere my 3 leaves into place and add the flower over the top of them as well. So I'm them on the edge of my stamp just to kind of frame the sentiment. And I used foam tape to pop up the little flower. Put the foam tape directly onto the tag. I thought it would be easier that way. Just decide which way around I want the flower and press that into place. I'll bring back my pattern paper, which is the kind of soft gloss leaf patterned paper. Whilst making this card kit, I was almost completely out of foam tape, so I found some random snippets of green craft foam and used double-sided tape to kind of create some makeshift foam tape, some dimension to the tag. And then once the tag is adhered to the pattern paper, I will adhere the pattern paper panel to my green card base using some double-sided tape, and I used my MISTI to help me get everything lined up. Going to use some of the Nuvo drops that came in the kit. These are jewel drops in Strawberry Coulis is the colour. They're a lovely red colour. 2 drops above the sentiment and 3 below the sentiment. These helped bring out the red of the flower a bit as well. So that completed card number 6. For card number 7, I went back to the toucan die, stamping out a sentiment on one of the on my other wooden banner, and this time I decided to heat emboss it in gold. Melting the powder does take a bit longer than normal because of the thickness of the wood, but it still is fairly quick. So I'm using a leftover gold circle from in a previous card. I will adhere that into place first. I'm using my T-square ruler to make sure my banner lines up, and I'm putting it right to that edge. I have a circle of pattern paper, and I actually should have put that down first, but because I'd used liquid glue I was able to lift the banner up and get the pattern paper in under it. Positioning, and I will add the toucan into place. Again, I'm using double put together of pieces of the leftover other toucans I had, which is why it's not your traditional toucan colours, it's kind of reversed colours. Second pattern paper circle, and then I want some of the strawberry Coulis Nuvo drops. Decide exactly where I want them. Goes into place. Completes card number 7. It has a lot of gold on it. I cut a piece of one of the pearlized pattern papers and I'm using the back side of it, so it's kind of just white paper with a golden sheen. I die cut it with the little circle die and heat embossed a sentiment onto it, and then I'm going to add a gold mirror frame to it. I'll adhere them together with double-sided tape on the back. I also have another gold frame to which I am adding a circle of pattern paper. Dark green card base, and I'm using I think this was called Punchinella, and I was trying to think at first how I could adhere it down, and I decided in the end it's probably easiest to treat it like vellum. All the adhesive behind the other elements I'm adding on. I did it was I added on the elements with double-sided tape and pressed it so that that same double-sided tape was reaching to the card base and holding it in place. I added 3 of the wooden flowers as other anchor points and also embellishments, and that completed that card. Card number 9 took me quite a while. If you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen a picture of these sequins. I spent quite some time separating them out so that I could have them by colour, using them to create a palm tree. A mixture of the gold and the small brown ones. The brown ones are kind of almost like dividing lines or shadowy areas between the segments of the pine that I'm using. I just drew and fussy cut out, and I've coated it with double-sided tape. Inspired by the very first idea I'd had with the card kit, which ended up not working out. I was thinking of making a palm tree with the brown fluff that came in the kit. Using the brown fluff as the trunk and then using the pipe cleaners as the leaves, but I couldn't get it to work how I wanted it to. So I ended up doing this instead, which I quite like. So and I'm going to use one of the tags again, and I decided to put the palm tree ribbon at the base of the tag of the just above it. My palm tree trunk. The ribbon, so the ribbon's acting as grounding for it. Then there was this green sequiny ribbon that came with all the ribbons in the small embellishment bag. I cut myself some short segments of that to be my palm leaves or the fronds of the palm tree, and I'm going to adhere them into place with my tacky glue. I actually ended up not using all of them, I had one extra one. I then took a piece of pattern paper and added another of the peel-offs to it so that I could line up my tag with it, so the peel-off almost looked like it was going across the card base and the tag. And again, I'm using some snippets of foam to add dimension to the back of the tag to help raise it off my pattern paper. So I'll get the tag lined up and pressed into place. I'll push it down once I'm happy with it, and then I'll put double-sided tape on the back of my pattern paper panel and adhere it to my card base, completing card number 9. My final card, I decided, as I often do with my final cards in card kits, decided to make a card with snippets. So off screen I picked out my snippets and worked out how I wanted to arrange them. So I have the subtle bluish leaf pattern paper, a strip of that on the left hand side, then a strip of the gold which wasn't quite long enough, so I cut it into 2 pieces and the gap in between will be hidden by another one of my snippets. I'm then adding the kind of Aztec look paper, so I'll just trim off the overhanging edges. And then I'm adding my strip going across, which covers up that gap between the gold pieces. And again, I would trim off the overhanging pieces, or piece. I had a gold circle left over from one of my frames, so I adhered that into place. I did work out where I needed to place it first. And then I have another toucan. This one I cut from white card and I used my alcohol markers to colour all the elements. So I would just position the toucan with his head going over that gold circle and press him into place. And I didn't add a sentiment on this one, but of course you could add one to the left of the toucan. And that completes all of my 10 cards. So the products I have used will be listed in the description box down below. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up, and you can subscribe both to my channel and the Love From Lizi channel by pressing the buttons on screen. There are some more videos here that you may enjoy, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments or on social media. I'd love to see your entries to our challenge as well, so be sure to check out the link for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!